I'm gonna be honest. If I'm ordering Chinese food, it's gonna be stir fry. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, I understand that. Or fucking sushi.
Well, sushi isn't Chinese food. Goddamn
Yeah.
racist.
You know what the fuck I mean. And pho's not
I don't know.
Chinese either.
What do you mean? I'm not a racist like you.
Pho is fucking Vietnamese, you piece of shit.
Oh, shit. The tables have turned. Now I'm the racist.
I think we already knew that.
Hello out there, all you beautiful people. Welcome to In Search of Gay Shit. My name, as always, is Dino Mora. With me today, as always, is that boy, Lane Bartley.
I am overwhelmed and honored to have that title bestowed upon me.
You know, we discussed this before the show, and I really thought that you were going to pull through with this one. You're supposed to say, "Oh shit, what up?" Not some sort of ceremonious speech about shit that doesn't matter.
I am kind of a sanctimonious asshole, though, so you should have expected it.
Do you want to do a take two, or...?
Well, that's up to you.
Okay, alright. No, it's fine. I guess we'll just work with it. Whatever. We'll do it live. Okay.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live. In case if nobody else has noticed, this is episode 2. So now we have to do this forever, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really kind of a shitty fate that has been thrust upon us, but we do our best to persevere.
We've kind of damned ourselves into this perpetual nightmare.
But Dino.
Yes.
Dino.
That's me.
How are you today?
How am I?
Yes.
I'm going through a bit of a pandemic.
How do you mean?
I have had green poos for the past 2 days, and I don't know what is causing it.
That sounds pretty terrible. Have you been eating a lot of spinach?
No, not really. I try best to not eat spinach ever, unless if it's been secretly finding its way into my food without my knowledge.
That would be really upsetting.
That would be really upsetting.
That would be more upsetting than green poo, honestly.
Well, would the green poo be a product of spinach? Is that a normal thing?
Some greens like that can cause things like that, but
hold on. Let's pause for a second. Are you a doctor?
I mean, I am dat boy.
That sounds like a yes to me. I just want you to know that I'm trusting you fully with your opinion on this.
I mean, there's a bunch of other things it could be that I'm not entirely familiar with, so should probably check WebMD. I hear that that's a reliable source of factual information.
No doubt. I guess I'll have to look into that. Today, on the docket, now that that's done, today on the docket, Lane and I would like to have a discussion with all of our lovely listeners. What is this, episode 2?
This is episode 2. I think
There's
we have
probably
3 people who have listened.
No, there's probably nobody now, I think, is what happened. We scared the only friends that we had off, and now it's just wasting away on the internet. Today we want to talk about, or rather we want to review, in quotes,
quote unquote,
a private server that we play on called $and WoW for the famous hit game World of Warcraft, The Wrath of the Lich King.
The game that all the kids are buzzing about on the school playgrounds.
On the school playgrounds, in school buses, classrooms, across the nation, it's like a wildfire. I've also got, I don't know, another 40 minutes worth of Dark Souls rambling that I guess I need to get out.
Wow.
Lane, of course, has another mystery review for us.
Shocking.
We're going to do a timely review about the anime Welcome to the NHK.
Aru.
Please don't. I recently watched a movie called, I don't know if you would call it a movie, it's more like a film or maybe like a documentary kind of sort of thing, called Bronson, and I'm going to talk about nothing in particular about that. And then Lane, of course, going to be rounding us up with a few music reviews that he wants to pose up. And then, of course, as always, we will finish with questions from the audience. Ha ha ha, as if anybody would listen to this. So, first things up. Lane, you're the one that wanted to talk about Dollar and WoW this week, correct?
Yes, I do remember mentioning something about that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. If you had to... So, the first thing, obviously, that a lot of people are going to take issue with is that...
Why are you still playing that shitty game that's been out for like 20 years?
Not even that. It's just, why are you playing on a private server? You know, that's usually the first roadblock that people come to whenever you try to explain that to them.
Right.
Assuming that they're already familiar with World of Warcraft in general.
Right. Well, are you asking me? Am I answering this question?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear what you have to say. I've never asked you because I don't really care normally, but let's for the sake of the podcast.
We'll pretend that you actually care about my opinion for a moment here.
Sure, let's do that.
So
it's not true, but okay.
Yeah, don't let him fool you, listeners. He definitely doesn't. So for me, World of Warcraft was I started playing when I was about 12 years old. So yes, I was that kid.
You were that boy.
I've always been that boy, to be fair. Yeah, my parents had started playing, and I was enthralled with it. And in the original incarnation, it was a very impressive game. Designed for 40 people to go and kill these raid bosses, and it was really cool.
So at 12 years old, you were playing the original release of World of Warcraft, correct?
Correct. I started playing about a month after the game released.
Oh, wow. Okay. Keep going.
I actually did raid some of the endgame content. I was like 13 at that point. Did Molten Core on Kiraj, all the good old shit. Played all the way through Cataclysm, and that's where I kind of fell off the bandwagon. And, reason I fell off during Cataclysm is because that's when some major changes to the game were implemented. The raids weren't quite as interesting as they used to be. The talents system was dramatically overhauled and reduced, which was really upsetting to me because it reduced the amount of customization you could have to your characters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the reason that I play on a private server rather than live is because I can play the game back when I feel it was in its best form. Vanilla, as it is colloquially referred to, for the original release, is still my favorite, but it is, because it's designed for 40 people to do everything, it's really hard to get a private server with a big enough population to actually do any of that. Wrath of the Lich King, which is what Dalaran WoW is, the expansion that they're on, was my favorite of the expansions by far. So,
right, agreed.
And, the raids were very intense, and, as cool as Outlands was, the story wasn't quite as, it didn't capture my attention quite as well. So that's why I play.
Right.
What about you, Dino? Why do you play on a private server?
Well, for me, it's, a lot of my motivation is rooted in nostalgia. Whenever I first started playing, I believe, I don't even know my age because I don't pay attention to that very often. But whenever I came in, it was towards the end of Burning Crusade. Mm-hmm. As they were transitioning into Wrath of the Lich King was whenever I was getting really close to the level cap. Mm-hmm. So I never actually got it to raid any of the Burning Crusade stuff. And honestly, a lot of it seemed to happen relatively quickly once the expansion was released.
Mm-hmm.
So Wrath of the Lich King was really my first exposure to true endgame WoW, because obviously nobody's doing any of the Burning Crusade raids whenever the newest thing is, pushing progression against like Old War and stuff like that.
Right.
And then, like you said, same as you, I played much of Wrath. I didn't really get to do any of the endgame content because I was a casual scrub, and I had a crappy computer at the time, so I couldn't really run it as well as I needed to because I was like a child or something. And
fucking terrible.
Yes, I agree. But I played up to and through Cataclysm. I believe I hit 85. We did some of the like heroic dungeons, and it was just like really boring. And the direction that it was heading with the talents and stuff, once they started oversimplifying that and just getting rid of a bunch of things that I felt were necessary to the game, it just, I don't know. I didn't really feel like it was worth playing anymore. It felt like it was, it almost felt like they were making it too simple or too easy in order to satiate a larger user base, and I was just like, man, I'm really not down for that.
Yeah. I will say that I did enjoy a lot of the heroic dungeons. A lot of them were really well done, but after you run them the first few dozen times, they start to lose their shine, as it were.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is that other than like the talents and the dungeons, I overall, as an expansion, really enjoyed Cataclysm.
Agreed.
A lot of the zones were really fun. The story was kind of engaging. I mean, honestly, I never really played the game for the story, but it was... Well, I shouldn't say that. Cataclysm was never, for the Horde side. Thrall was gone and fucking Garrosh is taking over.
Yeah, and there was all sorts of shit that happened there.
Gary Hellscrim.
Fuck that guy.
I hate that guy so much. I'm so glad that he's still not dead or something.
Yeah, I have done my best to not keep up with what's going on in live.
I believe, to my understanding, he was like he was like the Lich King of the Mists of Pandaria expansion. And he still somehow made it out alive, and he is the motivation for the Warlords of Draenor thing, because he somehow went back in time. You know, Blizzard, they like retconning shit. So I think that he's still
brilliant.
Despite how horrible of a character he still is not dead, because that's how Blizzard works.
Nice. That's about all I have to say about that. Nice.
Yeah, same. But this isn't about our personal experiences. This is about the server, Dalaran WoW itself. Now, you and I have been playing on this server for about... Well, we started about a year and a half ago, but there was a long break in there, so probably like 6-7 months total running time.
Yeah, and to be fair, we actually did take 2 pretty substantial breaks. Yeah, when was it? It was... I guess it was actually almost 2 years ago when we first started playing.
Really? Wow. Yeah, I guess it could have been that long. Man, time sure flies whenever... Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so we've been playing probably for what, you would say, 6-7 months in total now?
Probably about there, yeah.
Oh, something else we should mention before. So, one of the things that's interesting about private servers is that some things are going to be different from retail. One of the things that's really different about Dalaran WoW from retail is that it is a progressive server. And what this means is that in order to raid newer content, in quotes, you have to clear older content. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Wrath of the Lich King expansion because you came in after that and it wasn't really something that you were involved in, the progression goes, you have to clear Naxxramas, and then you go into Ulduar, and then Trial of the Crusader, and then into, finally, Icecrown Citadel whenever they decide to release it. And all of those are raids, for reference.
Yeah.
There's some other things that are triggered by that, other encounters and dungeons, but they're not really the goal, so to speak. So, one of the things that's really interesting is that they release these in a sequence. So whenever you and I started playing, the most advanced dungeon, or raid, that was out, was Ulduar.
Yeah, when we first started playing, I'm fairly sure Ulduar was actually a recent release, too.
Yeah, I do think I remember something about that as well. And we were able to get into Ulduar, and start pushing progression. But then we took a break, and whenever we came back, Trial of the Crusader was the newest one. So now, in our most recent spree, it has been a race to try and get Ulduar done to get to the newest content, because that's where all the good gear and loot is and stuff.
Right. Goal being that we'll be ready for Icecrown Citadel.
Exactly. Man, we keep getting sidetracked. This is not about us. This is about the server.
We are really good at getting sidetracked.
We are, some would say, the most sidetracked. Some would say this podcast itself is a sidetrack from actual real-world responsibilities. But you know what I call those people?
Correct.
Charlatans and liars. It's the most important thing we've ever done with our lives, as far as I'm concerned.
That is true. I believe it.
But on the whole, how would you... I don't know. But how do you even rate a private server? I feel like it gives a pretty... There's no XP boost. Everything is pretty realistic as far as how the game was originally.
Right. It's not one of the, if you're familiar listeners with the concept of private servers, if you've ever looked into them, you'll know that there are servers out there that offer, experience boosts where it's like 2 times experience. There's some that I've been on or seen that's like 15 times experience and stupid shit like that.
They like to get ridiculous with that sometimes.
And so the leveling is the same as it was in retail, Wrath of the Lich King, which of course is actually boosted from Vanilla and Burning Crusade, but...
What is the word that they choose to describe it?
Blizz-like?
Blizz-like, yeah, that's what they do. They try to keep it as close to the retail experience as possible.
Right. As far as rating the server itself is concerned, I think that main things that need to touch on are like the service that the mods provide and how true to the original experience it is. So, if you want to give your thoughts along those regards, I'll throw my comments in as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. So, the server on a whole does a pretty good job of recreating the experience of playing during the time of Wrath of the Lich King. Whenever we first started playing, there were a lot of bugs still present, but they've been working out a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the 1 to 60 range stuff works pretty much as intended. There's not a whole lot of issues there.
Right.
I know that there's some issues with the 61 to 70 area, the Burning Crusade stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Questing usually isn't an issue. It's a lot of the dungeon encounters.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that heroic dungeons for the Burning Crusade stuff, a lot of the damage scaling definitely seems off.
Yeah, there's a lot of people still to this day complaining about Blood Furnace, trying to go back and get their achievements.
Yeah, even at level 80, going back and trying to farm those with 2 or 3 people, just regular dungeons, it's still, the damage is just way, way higher than it should have been. But from 71 to 80, the actual Wrath of the Lich King content, they do a pretty good job. There are a few places where quests just don't work, but it's usually like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 per zone.
Right.
And they're not normally major roadblocks. And a lot of them is just confusing. There's ways to work around the issues. It's just, you have to ask around and figure out how to do it.
Yeah,
or,
you have to know someone who already has gone through it and figured it out.
Exactly. And of course, one of the features of the server, I don't know about this about a whole bunch of other servers, is that there's actually a global chat service that you can use. Well, not service, that's giving it too much credit. But there's a global chat function that you can use to talk with anybody else who's on your alliance, as it were, while you're playing. And it's usually pretty active. As far as American times go, they're normally pretty active most days of the week from like, what would you say, like 5 to 10 o'clock Central Time?
Easily, and I think it's really even a couple hours before and after that. There's pretty consistently a couple hundred people on each side.
Yeah. It probably peaks. I think the most I've ever seen is 1,100 at one point in time on Horde side.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
I've heard rumors of days where it's more like 1,300, but I haven't been on for any of those.
Good God. One of my biggest concerns, though, one of my biggest issues with Dollar N1 is just there are a lot of random server shutdowns that'll happen without warning.
Yeah.
Which I'm still not 100% sure if that's an issue with the server getting like overloaded or if that's just the admins deciding that it needs to be restarted.
And in fairness, Blizzard, even when it was live, despite having hundreds of people devoted to keeping that up, they did still have problems like that.
Agreed. We should state for the record that until recently, there was only one person running these servers, to our knowledge.
Yeah, he just recently hired, I think, like half a dozen people to help him out as devs.
And it's actually shown a lot. There have been a lot of tickets getting answered that I've noticed.
A lot of encounters have been fixed. One of the big complaints that people had for a long time was one of the things that you could do is there's achievements in the game for doing things essentially on hard mode. And in the heroic dungeons for Wrath of the Lich King, there's a special mount that you can get if you do a pretty long list of achievements for it. And there were a lot of those achievements that you couldn't get because of bugs in the dungeons.
Exactly.
And they recently went back and they fixed all of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've done pretty good work at being active lately. We really look forward to their continued service, and hopefully eventually they'll get the newer raid content out, because I know that things are starting to stagnate now that Trial of the Crusader's been out for a while.
Yeah, unfortunately, Trial of the Crusader was never even really that good of a raid, even in retail. It was really a placeholder, and that's what it's becoming here.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. But I think that overall they provide a pretty good experience. Definitely enjoy it. If obviously if this isn't your thing, then just fuck off. But Lane, what do you have to say about Dalaran WoW?
So my opinion on this is a lot like you said. Recently, they've been doing a much better job of providing a good customer experience. They've been doing their best to handle bug issues, but for a while, there were some things that were really frustrating. And they've even been doing better about keeping the server up and running and not having quite as many random disconnects as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit frustrating for me personally because there are some of the really cool quest lines that you could do while leveling. For anyone who's familiar, like the Wrathgate quest line is bugged in Dragonblight, and the stuff with the dragons is always my favorite because I'm a fucking nerd.
True.
So, having all that be bugged and not really being able to do those quests is frustrating to me personally. But as we stated, there's plenty of ways still to work around it. There's plenty of things. There's plenty of other places you can go and quest that there's next to no bugs. It was just that one particular zone.
Right. We should state for the record that getting from 71 to 80 is not an issue. There's definitely enough questing and experience and stuff. It works. It's just there's a few quest lines that just don't work for one reason or another.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll have to go to an area that you've never been to before because your questing path that you used in retail doesn't work.
Exactly.
It's all a part of the experience.
100% agree. Any other thoughts?
And this is another personal thing as well. A lot of my time that I spend on there, if I'm not running raids or dungeons or anything like that, I like to sit and bullshit in the global chat. There's a lot of people who sit in there and talk. They've recently been throwing out the ban hammer a lot, though. They've been coming down on people for trolling global, which I understand with some people, because there are some people who get in there and start spouting some really racist, misogynistic shit, and, just like any online game, just like World of Warcraft retail.
Well, hold on. Sexist shit. We don't exclusively cater to just women. Anybody can be hated against.
That is true. I apologize for being white cisgendered male scum. But so I do agree that there are definitely some people who need it, but I think a couple of the mods have been a little over the top lately. And I think that'll settle down as time goes on.
I actually haven't seen anybody get banned for trolling in global. The only things I've seen people get banned for are legitimate cheating or hacking.
They have been cracking down on that, which is what tempers my irritation about that. But a couple people, there have been a few people who I haven't seen on in a very long time, and I know for a fact that they got talked to about their trolling habits.
Uh-oh.
So our good old friend, Please Don't Bully, and
Oh, well, to be honest, I'm happy that they banned him.
They banned him. They gave him a temp ban for telling premium jokes.
Well, those were pretty good.
And the joke there is you can donate to the server, which is how they fund keeping it up, because obviously if it was a paid service, Blizzard would shut them down. And if you donate, you become a quote-unquote premium member. Basically all that means is if you don't play for a long enough period of time, they'll delete your characters to free up room on the server. If you're premium, they'll never delete your characters. And a couple other just random things like that. It doesn't really have much impact in game, but it's more about you'll get your tickets answered quicker and stuff like that.
Yeah, yes, more or less what it comes down to. So let's give it a score. Let's give it a totality, a big. Let's put a number on it.
All right.
Let's give him a brand.
Put a ring on it?
No, a number.
Oh.
You listening?
All right. Sorry.
What number out of 10 would you give?
What number out of 10? Well, I would say that they deserve probably an 8 out of 10, because they give good effort. It's got its, like we said, its share of bugs and stuff still that need to get worked on, but they're doing their best, so I'll give them an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. I'm gonna give them an 8 out of 10 too. I think that's fair. They do pretty good. It's fun, and it's legal, barely.
That is true.
Yeah, I'll give them an 8 out of 10.
On the fringe.
On the outskirts. Yeah. So there you go. 8 out of 10. Dollar and wow. Good job. Enough said. Right. Moving on. I have more stuff to say about Dark Souls. Aren't we all happy to hear that?
I am shocked to hear these things.
So, it's been 2 weeks. I've played more Dark Souls 3. The first thing that I want to talk about is, I think, what was it? 3-4 days after our last recording, I did something that I hadn't done for the first time in a Dark Souls game.
Wow.
Now, I don't think this was something that was popularized in any of the other games, but there's something that you can do now called, well, it's not called, basically I hosted a fight club. And how that works is there's a specific area.
Wait a second.
Uh-huh.
I thought that you weren't supposed to talk about that.
You know what? You're right, but this is my fight club. But there's a specific area in Dark Souls 3 where there is a lot of red summon signs.
Mm-hmm.
And Lane, since you're not wholly familiar, I'll go ahead and just explain that for a moment. Red summon signs are summon signs, but for red phantoms. Mm-hmm. So you basically get invaded.
Yeah, they're the invade points, right?
They're not the invade points. There's a difference between being invaded and summoning a red phantom.
Okay.
You still summon a phantom, but it's like you're fighting an invader, more or less.
Gotcha.
So you fight the guy, and if you win, he goes away. If you lose, then you die, obviously, like you normally would. Mm-hmm. But, so there's a certain point in the game where you can... So there's just a bunch of red summon signs. It's like the unspoken, wholly agreed upon area where everybody goes to duel and do fight clubs, more or less. Mm-hmm. And there's an item that they have in this game called Dried Fingers. Now, they've had this item in every other Souls game up until now, and I'm going to be honest, I had no idea what the fuck it did.
Okay.
And I didn't really... I never really did PvP in the other games.
Mm-hmm.
So, coming into this game and after seeing what people had done with it, I was, like, really surprised. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to try that. So, the way it works is you go to this place with all the red signs. You use the Dried Fingers, and what that allows you to do is summon extra people.
Mm-hmm.
Before, I believe the way it works, before if you wanted to summon Red Phantoms, you could only have 3 in your world at a time. By using the Dried Fingers, you can summon 1 additional Phantom, and also get invaded by an additional Phantom.
Mm-hmm.
However, since they're red summon signs, I believe they count towards either. So using that, you can have up to 5 other people in your world at one time.
Mm-hmm.
So the way it works, and this is actually kind of funny, the first time I did this, I've done this several times since then, the first time I did this, it actually kind of happened by accident.
Mm.
I had gone out, used the Dried Fingers, and started summoning people. But the first one didn't go through, so I was like, fuck it, I'll summon 2 and 3. So I summoned a bunch of people, was trying out a new build, and as they were coming in, I started running around trying to get away from them and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone ahead and gone up to the point. Well, I guess this didn't really happen by accident. It was just kind of funny to initiate. So there were 4 of us there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I run up to the point where the way the area is set up, it's sort of like an overlook over a little arena, kind of almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I get up to the overlook, and I'm looking at the other guys, and none of them want to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them are fighting me. So it's like they all know, but none of them want to initiate it. And so finally I just walk over and I kick one of the guys off of the overlook. Kicking in the game, for the record, doesn't cause any damage. It just manipulates the other character's avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And I kicked him off the ledge into the arena, and then another guy jumped in, and then it went at it. I was like, hell yeah, this is happening now. I'm doing this. And so from that point on, it went on for a good, hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually really surprised. It was probably some of the most fun that I've had technically not playing Dark Souls 3 ever.
Sounds fairly dank, I'd say.
It's really interesting because I'll watch other people online on YouTube and stuff and do invasions and duels and stuff like that. And usually a lot of them are either one-off tricks or super try-hard, so they'll be super optimized and shit.
Yeah.
And so my my concept of what is worthwhile in PvP and stuff is very narrow because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And after I did this, I saw a lot of different builds and a lot of goofy shit. One of my favorite ones, and one that a few of the people that I watched swore up and down was never possible and completely useless. I saw this guy. I'll try to explain this so that you can understand it as well, Lane.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy who had, what was it? He had Smo's armor, and then the rest of it was Armor of Thorns set. Smo's armor is very heavy,
mm-hmm.
and the Armor of Thorns, whenever you roll into somebody, causes them to take damage.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an effect that isn't normally present. But he was using it with, I think it must have been a bandit's dagger or something. It was one of the daggers where you could quick step. And he was two-handing this dagger, and he was quick-stepping around people.
Mm-hmm.
And all he was doing chip damage, 8 damage, 8 damage, 8 damage, 8 damage, the whole entire time. And he would sometimes swing at the dagger and do a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But, all he was doing was just dancing around people. Because of the quick step, he was able to maneuver around people a lot more better than he could do by doing rolls.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was wearing Smo's armor, he was too heavy for people to break him out of his iframe, so he never got staggered.
Mm-hmm.
So all he would do is he would just dance around these people and just continuously be doing chip damage the whole time, staggering them, coming in with the dagger, getting backstabs and stuff, just constantly wearing them down, and nobody could beat him. It was the craziest thing.
That sounds pretty intense.
He went... so the way it works normally in fight clubs is that whoever wins gets to keep fighting, and you go until there's nobody left.
Mm-hmm.
But, so this guy, I think he won, maybe 7 or 8 matches in a row.
Nice.
against all this other goofy shit that I had seen. Like all this, like there were a few builds where it was like, yeah, that guy probably doesn't know what he's doing, but there were like probably 2 or 3 builds in there where it was like, yeah, okay, this guy's try-harding pretty good. I think he knows his way around, you know, the build that he's trying to go with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, man, I would never have seen that before. I'm so glad that this exists. It was really interesting. But, yeah, I had my first one of those. The first one ended. Now, I don't know if this is like a consensus thing that I didn't know about. But a guy came in, and I had just summoned.
Mm-hmm.
And as he was coming in, the 2 combatants that were in the ring had killed each other at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And as that happened, I don't know if it was coincidence and this guy was going to do it anyway, or if he did it because they both died at the same time. But as soon as they both died, he came in and then he backstabbed me. And he had like the Hornet Ring and all this other goofy shit, and he basically just one-shot me. And I was like, well, I can't be mad because that's his job, but I guess that's the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've done a few more, and it's just really, I don't know, it's so bizarre because obviously at any point in time, like what just happened, you know, people can turn on you and just fight you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so strange how there's just this understanding, almost this respect,
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people just won't do it. You know, even in that single instance, I've done a few more. I haven't actually been deliberately attacked and killed like that since then.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that one guy mostly. So yeah, that was pretty fun. If you have Dark Souls 3 out there and you haven't done it, I definitely recommend, for all you people out there who haven't, going to the bonfire at Pontiff Solivan and just going outside and trying to host a few fight clubs. I will say that it is easier once you get to level 100. That's kind of the agreed upon PvP level. It's a lot easier to get other people in because that's where a lot of people are doing PvP at and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
That's kind of like what you were saying with the understanding that everyone has. It's like, one of the things that I will say to backtrack a little bit about Dalaran WoW that I do appreciate is a lot of the people on Alliance side, if they see you and you're not making any move to attack them, a lot of them won't fuck with you. And it's just kind of like a mutual understanding. You know, I've gone in and helped people on the Alliance side kill bosses that would have killed them and stuff like that.
Really?
It's always a nice little community thing.
That has never happened to me.
That's kind
Every
of
time I ever run into Alliance, they try to kill me, and then I, in return, have to try to kill them or run away.
I actually had, while I was leveling my shaman, you know, what is that, like a couple of weeks ago now?
Right.
There was a priest who was multi-boxing, and it was a priest, a druid, and a mage, and something else, all controlled by the same person.
Alright.
The priest waved at me, motioned me over to her, mind-controlled me, gave me all of the buffs, and then sent me on my way.
That's actually pretty crazy. That's really funny. Huh. That's almost spooky. That's like running into Slenderman in Dalaran WoW. I don't know if I could handle that.
It was when it was happening. I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay with this."
You're lucky that like two little girls who are also your friends didn't take you out into the woods and stab you after that, man.
Wouldn't be surprised.
So, yeah, that's pretty much what I had to talk about Dark Souls 3. There were a few other things, but we're starting to run on in time because right now it is time for Lane's mystery review.
Oh snap! Is it that time?
Ooh.
Spooky as hell. So, all of my faithful listeners who I know you come back to this show again and again for this moment, have I got a surprise for you. Today, I would like to talk about hair. Not any particular hairstyle, not anything explicitly that you can do with hair. Hair itself.
Well, I will say that this is truly a mysterious review. Already. I am intrigued. Do go on.
So, you know, everyone's got hair, unless you've got some kind of condition where you don't have any hair, and in which case I'm sorry for being an offensive prick here. But
Yeah, super triggered right now.
basically, everyone that I've ever known has hair. We all deal with it. Some people shave it, some people cut it, some people just let it do whatever it wants. I personally am a pretty big fan of hair. Keeps my face warm when I grow out my beard during the winter, and also keeps my face swelteringly hot during the Texas summers that we're currently about to start going through. And because I'm a stubborn asshole, I won't shave it anyway.
You are a stubborn asshole.
So, from an evolutionary standpoint, hair is one of the better things that nature ever came up with. Because like I said, hair is really good at insulation. It keeps you warm when it's cold outside. And then even now, when we don't really need that anymore, it also can be very stylish. Wouldn't you agree, Dino?
Yeah, I've seen styled hair before, I think. I'm pretty sure.
At least once in your life, I'm sure you've seen someone who has styled their hair in a manner that made you go, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think that's happened. Yeah, I'll agree. That's happened before.
So, real quick, I'd like to give you an opportunity to offer your thoughts on what I've had to say so far.
Hair. I'm for it on the head. I'm for it on the face. I'm for it on the chest if you ain't got tits. I'm not for it in my food. I'm not for it in my mouth in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about my feelings on hair.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not a big fan of hair in the food. That is one of my least favorite places for hair to be. And but thankfully today we don't have to review hair in food. Today it's just hair in general.
Thank God, no hair in food.
So yeah. Really, I just wanted to throw out my musings on, some people, Dino, spend hundreds of dollars to have someone... Hundreds of dollars. To have someone cut their hair in some pretty fantastic ways. Did you know, I've seen pictures of a man, Dino, a man who styled his beard into the shape of a windmill.
Yeah, that's like a...
That's a meme, Dino.
It's like a 10-year-old meme. I've heard of that before. That may be one of the styles that I've seen before, actually, now that we're talking about it.
I know that you are a fan of the classic memes, so I figured you would remember that one.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
I would even go so far as to say that is a vintage meme.
Do you think that man actually paid somebody to do that? Or that he just learned how to do it as an acquired trade? Like, that's his family's skill, is beard craft or something.
I really want to believe that is his life work, and that he himself went through that effort.
Because, they have competitions for this kind of stuff.
They do.
Beard-offs, as they were.
That reminds me of a time, about a year and a half ago. I'm sure you remember this, but...
Some would say age is past.
Yes. In the far-flung past of 2014.
All right.
Very few people remember these days. They were dark times.
Exactly.
But one of the few shining lights in that darkness was No Shave November, the year 2014,
All right.
when I challenged my pool group to a beard off, where we all, the day before November began, October 31st, Halloween, for those who don't know, we all...
You heard it here first, folks.
We all shaved our beards and just let it grow for the next month. And it's a pretty amazing change that overcame some of us. For example, despite the fact that I'm almost 26 years old, if I shave my face, I look like a child.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
Some would say that you still are a child even with the beard.
that is true. At least I don't look like it, though. So I can trick people.
Exactly.
But, and for a while before that, I'd been rocking a little bit of stubble, and I tried out a goatee for a while. But I feel like that period in my life was one of the best decisions I've ever made, and I have rocked the full beard since.
So you would say that it was like an awakening for you.
I would go so far as to say that. There
It
was...
was sort of like a watershed moment with regards to beards.
It's true.
Wow.
And so at the end of that month, when we all compared our beards, there was a little bit of debate. My beard was generally considered to be the fullest and best grown in. There was one other person, Justin, who I know you've met, and none of our viewers know or care about.
Nope.
His beard was a lot thicker on the neck, so there was a little bit of debate there about whose was better.
Ugh.
But
Thicker on the neck. Who likes that? Ugh.
That's what I said.
Ugh.
In the end, I think it was agreed upon that my beard was the best grown, and it has inspired me to maintain that. And,
wow. The best grown beard out of a selection of 6-ish people.
Yes. I know that very few scientific studies involve more than 2 or 3 individuals.
This is really an achievement for you. I feel like I should congratulate you now, 1.5 years later, for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And another note on hair, I actually today went to a hairstylist and got my hair did, as it is referred to.
Hold on. You went to a stylist?
I did.
Not a barber.
Correct.
You?
Me.
A man.
A man.
Went to a stylist.
Correct.
Is this the year 2016?
It is.
How do you like that?
What a time to be alive.
You heard it here first, folks.
But
this is the time to be alive.
I figured that since today we were discussing hair, it would behoove me to get the full hair experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, at this stylist, they not only cut my hair, they trimmed my beard, shampooed and conditioned, and gave a scalp massage.
Oh, hold on. We're talking about hair here, not scalps.
That is true, but it is important to remember that hair grows out of the scalp.
Newsflash. All right, continue.
And then, on top of that, they took oil specifically designed to nourish the beard and rubbed that into my beard for me.
Was there like a special machine that did that, or did they do it by hand as well?
They did it by hand. It is a very practiced craft.
Wow. How much did that cost you, out of curiosity?
It cost me $25 before tip.
I'm asking for a friend.
I always tend to tip very well, though, so I tipped $10 on a $25 ticket for that.
Good God. That's amazing. It must have been a pretty damn good haircut. Sorry, styling.
It was pretty good. And another thing about this place is they will give you a beer for free when you go in.
For free?
For free.
So I can just go in there and get a beer and then jog off and be on my way.
Well, you should probably pay for the haircut.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know about this place anymore. I was sold a minute ago. Now I'm not so sure.
Well, to each their own.
What sort of rating would you give this salon? Is that what it's called?
It is a salon, actually.
Oh.
I would give them a 9 out of 10. They are
9 out of 10.
They are pretty fantastic. I've actually gone there several times before, and they've worked with me because our work schedules are pretty hectic, switching my days and all that, and they've never given me any problems about that. And they're all very kind individuals, and they all know their craft. So
a 9 out of 10 is almost perfect.
It is. It's
what
just
would you
shy
say
of perfect.
What would you say is the one thing that they could improve upon that would really push it over the edge for you?
To push it over the edge. Well, that is hard to say. I think one of the things for me, despite the beers being offered and the very good treatment, it is definitely still very girly. So as a man, it is still a strange thing to me.
Ah, okay. So you're saying that it's the fact that you're a cisgendered scumbag that it doesn't get a perfect score.
Yes, exactly.
I understand now. This is 2016, people. Thank you.
You heard it here first. It is
Do you have-
2016.
Do you have anything else to say about hair, or is that going to conclude it?
I think that's really all that needs to be said. I mean, we've pretty much all got it. We all know what it's about, and
All right, I'm gonna throw like 5 or 6 hairstyles at you. I just want you to give me a good thumbs up or thumbs down.
all
You
right,
ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Bald.
Thumbs up.
Bald with a mustache.
Thumbs up.
Anime hair.
3 thumbs up.
All right. Pompadour.
There are not enough thumbs in the world to give enough thumbs up to the pompadour.
A mullet.
A mullet, that's gonna be a thumbs down.
A rat tail.
The opposite of the pompadour. Not enough thumbs to be down for that.
Got a few more.
All right.
A ponytail.
Ponytails, thumbs up.
Ponytail on a man.
Depends on the man, but generally thumbs up.
Ponytail on a fat, disgusting man.
That's probably thumbs down.
Would any hair on a fat, disgusting man really be a thumbs up?
Probably
That was-
not.
That was a trick question. You passed. Let me see here. I got 2 more. What were they? Nah, I guess that was it. Oh no, afro. How do you feel
Afro.
about that?
Afros are a thumbs up.
Okay.
They take
Okay.
dedication.
That's true. It's a lot of work. It's like a pompadour. A lot of work goes into those. Cool. All right. So that'll complete Lane's mystery review. This week it was about hair. Hope you're all happy now.
Next week it'll be a mystery.
Next week it'll be. That's exactly true. Perfect. You really knocked it out of the park with this one.
Thank you. I do my best.
All right. Next up on the docket, we have, of course, our timely review of the anime, Welcome to the NHK.
Welcome to the NHK. I remember that anime. I watched that.
Yes. It was a good anime. Let me see here if I can just find a summary somewhere. Yeah, I'll just read this off of the wiki. So in Japan, NHK refers to the public broadcaster Nippon Hoso Kyokai. But within the series, the main character believes it stands for Nihon Hikikomori Kyokai, or the Japanese Hikikomori Association, which is a reference to the protagonist's claim of a of a subversive conspiracy led by NHK, the real-life broadcaster, to create Hikikomori. While it mainly deals with the phenomenon of Hikikomori, the plot also explores many other Japanese subcultures, for example, otaku, lolicon, and internet suicide packs. So the story focuses around our main character, Sato, who is a Hikikomori. A Hikikomori, for those of you who don't know, and who are uncultured, is a... Would you say it's more like a psychological disease or a social disease?
I mean, really, it's kind of a combination of the two. It's, hikikomori is typically a lot of social anxiety, refusal to be out and involved in society and all that, and it's also a lot of times accompanied by depression and other stuff like that. So it encompasses multiple facets of...
Yes. Hikikomori is the condition of not wanting to interact with anybody, usually accompanied by, like Lane has said, depression, social anxiety. Typically, in more extreme cases, people will not even leave their homes under any circumstances. unless if for dire, needs.
Absolutely
Such as,
have to.
exactly, like buying food or something like that. A lot of the times, hikikomori are also NEET, which NEET is an acronym that stands for Not Employed in Education or in Training, meaning that you have no job, you're living off of some sort of social welfare, usually. That or an allowance from a loved one or some sort.
Yes.
So, our protagonist is a lovable hikikomori, who is also a NEET. And the show focuses around him. It gives a lot of his inner monologue, a lot of his inner thoughts. There are some times where reality is diluted and we don't really understand. We're seeing what he sees, more or less.
Right. There are times where it's hard to tell whether what you're seeing is actually reality or if it's just his borderline hallucinations.
Exactly. The tone of the show, on the whole, is basically back
Hold
and
on a
forth
second.
between... Oh, yeah?
Is this a robot impersonating Dino?
I hope not. Is there
Okay.
a problem?
You sounded like a robot for a moment there.
Okay.
But
I hope that doesn't happen.
It sounds better now.
Okay, good. A story focus... What the hell were we talking about? Oh, the general feel of the show is back and forth between, like, comedic and really sad. It's a slice of life, so there's no, like, crazy fantasy elements. There's no giant robots or anything like that. It takes place in Japan. It follows around this one guy, Sato Tatsuhiro, and his friends as he tries to deal with and cope with the process of being a hikikomori.
Mm-hmm.
The show itself, that is aired, is 26 episodes long, correct? 24 episodes, sorry. And, yeah, it's a pretty fun time. Lane, do you have anything to say about it? What are your thoughts about Welcome to the NHK?
Well, Welcome to the NHK was a very interesting experience. You and I watched that together. I believe it was your second time watching it and my first time, back when we were living at the house together. It was a long time ago now. I think it actually it resonated with me a good bit because of a lot of the things that I was going through at the time, with my family and all that, being fairly depressed and not really wanting to do a whole lot. Obviously, I didn't take it to that extreme, thank God, but
Right.
the show, I feel, is one of the more accurate representations of that kind of a condition. There are a lot of anime out there that touch on it, but the ones that do are quite often more like No Game, No Life, or something like that, where they take the NEET or the hikikomori and throw them into these fantastic situations and they rise to the challenge, when quite often they would just shut down entirely in that kind of a situation.
Exactly. There's a lot of strange portrayal of this disease that involves a lot of glorification, and it's really... if you watch NHK and you see what he's going through, it's really just honestly horribly depressing whenever you think about it on the whole.
Right. From a non-story perspective, the intro and the outro to NHK are both two of my favorites out of any anime that I've watched.
For the first half of the series.
Right, agreed. The outro is like one of the only outros to any anime that I have ever actually watched with every episode of the anime, because I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was a pretty catchy song. I like that one a lot.
So that's a little bit out of the ordinary, and definitely factors into my opinion of it. I like the art style a lot.
Yeah, there's no skimping. There clearly were no budget problems. It was well funded. It looked good. The animation was smooth. There were never any like weird flash editing things where they just dragged the still frame or anything.
Right. But yeah, a lot of what you've already touched on. The story is definitely very interesting. Like I said, it's a good portrayal, and it touches on a lot of things that a lot of people go through. But like I said, not necessarily to that extent.
Yeah, one of the constant themes throughout is the main character, Sato, constantly hoping for a better life for himself, or wanting a better life for himself, or even being aware of the situation, the problems that he's causing for the people around him, and wanting to be better, but just feeling so stricken and just depressed and unable to cope with his situation that he just stagnates and he just doesn't do anything a lot of the time.
Being so depressed that knowing that he's hurting people makes him even more depressed and even more unable to fix it.
Exactly. And it's very relatable if you've ever been through something like that. It does a very good job of portraying it honestly and not trying to glorify things.
Right.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it is also really sad.
It's one of those shows where you'll watch it and it's just so horribly depressing, but you want to keep watching it. It's one of those kind of shows.
Right.
Not going to spoil anything about the ending, obviously, or key plot points. If you want to watch it, go ahead and watch it yourself. We're all adults here. We can afford to pay for high-class animes like that if we want to.
It's true.
Let's see here. I don't really think there's a whole lot more to say about it. NHK, it's really sad. I recommend watching it. In the rankings of our top 10 animes, for me personally, it sits at number 1. Not even joking. Lane, where does it sit for you? Is it even in the top 10? Or?
I would say it's in my top 10. I would say it probably is closer to like number 6 or 7 for me. But it is still, it definitely was very powerful. And in spite of, like we've harped on being very sad, it is also very funny. There's a lot of very good comedic breaks to it.
It's not one of those ones where it keeps on just trying to make you want to kill yourself. It does a good job of pacing and making sure that it isn't overly depressing and overly sad. There are definitely bright moments, but they definitely are in between other moments that are really depressing. So yeah. What would you rate Welcome to the NHK?
Welcome to the NHK. I know that we keep doing this, and we keep reviewing things that we rate really highly.
Well, you know what? It's our fucking podcast. We're going to do whatever we want.
That is true. I agree. I would rate NHK at a solid 9.5 out of 10.
I agree. It's not 100% perfect. There are a few things that feel confusing here and there. Probably can count the number of times on one hand, though, compared to some other shows.
Right.
Yeah, character design, music. It honestly hits out of the park on a lot of points for me. 9.5 out of 10. Not quite perfect. There are a few things, but definitely one of the more higher up there ones.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. So that'll be it for that. I recently watched a film, a biopic, if you will, called Bronson. Bronson, I didn't know anything about this movie going into it. All I had seen was, I guess, the movie poster for it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is of a muscular man with boxing gloves on. I think that's what they are. His hands just might be wrapped. I can't really tell.
Mm-hmm.
With a shaven head, no shirt, and a grand mustache. I didn't really know a whole lot about it going into it. I just knew that it was really out there. Let me read the summary here. A young man who was sentenced to 7 years in prison for robbing a post office ends up spending 3 decades in solitary confinement.
All right.
During this time, his own personality is supplanted by his alter ego, Charles Bronson. So, like I said, it's a biopic. This is based on a real person.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for him now, his name is no longer Charles Bronson. He calls himself Charles Salvador.
All right.
His born name was Michael Peterson. So this is a man who was born in the 70s, I believe, and it follows his life as he goes through growing up and goes through the prison system. And yeah, it's really out there. Based on the summary, well, first off, let me just say, if that at all sounds interesting to you, go out and watch it. Don't listen to anything that I have to say. Anything that I'm going to say is just going to spoil shit for you, because it's really trippy. You're better served knowing nothing going into it.
Mm-hmm.
Or knowing as little as possible, I should say.
Well, shit, I'm going to turn my speakers off.
Yeah, see you later. It's the end of the podcast. Good job, everyone. But, it's really interesting in that it follows this guy's life. Charles Bronson himself, for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to call him Bronson for the rest of it. Bronson himself is a man who spent all this time in prison without doing anything particularly heinous. Mm-hmm. He mostly just beat the shit out of people. Mm-hmm. Like, that's his thing. Growing up, he was a very violent kid. He was very angry. In one of the opening scenes, it shows him as, like, I guess, maybe like a 13 or 14-year-old in school. And the scene is just a view of a classroom. He's at the front of the class. He decks the teacher with one punch, walks over to a desk, and throws it at him while the teacher is whimpering in the corner.
All right.
Yeah, that pretty much is that happens in like the first 5 minutes of the movie, and that sets a very good tone for the rest of what is to happen. So the story is, it follows Bronson's life up to the point where I believe the film was done in 2008. Up to that point, because he's still in prison now.
Huh.
Yeah. So he robs this post office, right? Mm-hmm. He goes in there, armed robbery. He's got like a sawed-off shotgun or something. He never shoots it. He makes out with like 26 pounds, I think is what it was.
Right.
The man's robbing a post office, so what kind of money are they going to have?
It definitely seems like a worthwhile crime.
He makes it out, and he gets arrested, and now he's in prison. I
will say for a second, with the way that hung there, I thought you were going to say he made out with 26 people while holding the shotgun.
That would definitely be out of the ordinary for a movie about a man who's in solitary confinement for 30 years. But he ends up in prison. And the way that the story is told, it's done via a monologue of current-day Bronson, more or less. And he's, like, speaking before a stage. So it's literally like he's talking to you, the people who are watching the movie, right? And he's explaining his life, talking about, I got into prison, and then it shows a scene of him as he's finally being locked up in his first cell, and then he puts his head into his hands, and he starts crying. Mm-hmm. And then immediately following that, like in a split second, Bronson on stage talking to the audience. It comes on. He's in clown face paint, and then he's just laughing. And he's like, gotcha. And it follows his life as he's going through prison. He was sentenced, I believe, originally, what did it say?
7 years.
7 years, yeah. 7 years originally. Any time that he had a chance, more or less, he would just beat the shit out of whoever was, like, transferring him. Mm-hmm. There's one point, this is later in the movie, there's one point where he's lying on his bed, his cot or whatever, and one of the guards, the librarian, comes in with some books, and he's just talking to him casually. Bronson's just lying there on the bed. The librarian's trying to get him to read some books. He's talking to him, and he gets up, he goes over, he closes the door, and he just starts screaming at the guy. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the first times in the show where we see the other reason that he's ended up in prison for so long is for kidnapping. He would kidnap people while in prison.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Guards would come in. It's insane whenever you watch it the first time. It's just like, what's the motivation for this? Why is he doing this,
Most people, even like hardened criminals, want to get out of prison.
Exactly. But it honestly, he even says it at one point. He says, prison, I fucking loved it. Like, that's his whole existence. It's really really fucking out there.
I mean, I guess whatever floats his boat.
So anyway, he's in prison for all this time, right? And finally they decide, we can't keep him in prison. He keeps beating the shit out of all of our guards. He keeps costing us all this fucking money by breaking shit and causing us damages and repairs for people and stuff. So what they do is they throw him in an insane asylum instead.
Cheaper.
And that is the start of his solitary confinement, I think, if I remember correctly. That's whenever they give him... Or no, that's not the start. So he's in the insane asylum. And obviously, it's not prison guards. It's not prisoners there. So he's beating the shit out of people who aren't even paid for that kind of shit. And what they end up having to do is they just keep him under nearly constant sedation. And it's at this point where Bronson realizes, oh, I may be fucked up.
Right.
And he really, really wants to get out. And so his solution for this is that he decides that he is going to attempt to murder somebody.
That's a good way to improve and to get out.
Exactly, right? He just wants to get back into prison. And so he tries to kill somebody. And it doesn't go correctly. So then he attempts this murder. The guy lives, and he ends up going over to another insane asylum. But it's different in that he's not amongst other crazy people. He is kept in solitary confinement. And that's where the solitary comes in. He's kept in there for 26 years.
That's fucking absurd.
Yeah, we're like 23 hours out of every day he is left alone, straight up. No contact, no outside, nothing. It's crazy. And unfortunately, that part in the movie is really glanced over. They don't really go a whole lot into psychologically what he went through that. It's kind of like just sort of this like 3-minute explanation of what happened, and then the next scene is him getting out. So finally, so he's in prison, right? The 26 years of solitary, and he apparently at some point staged a rebellion, right? Where it's a rooftop rebellion where he gets a bunch of other prisoners and they go onto the roof and they just destroy shit.
Okay.
So he's on this. They show him on this roof. He's wearing like a mask and he's throwing up his two hands into V's like victory and shit while he's sitting up there and stuff. And they'd literally just burn the shit out of this insane asylum. It's crazy.
Nice.
And apparently after that it becomes too expensive to keep him in an insane asylum, so they deem him sane and they let him go.
What?
Yeah, that was their solution. They can't keep him in prison, so they can't keep him in an insane asylum, so they just let him go. And he actually makes it outside for, get this, he's outside a free man for 69 days.
Wow. I am blown away.
And then they arrest him again, and he's back in prison, and he's been in there ever since.
What did they arrest him for this time?
Boxing without a license.
Nice.
Yeah, so he's... Ever since then, they've given him a life sentence, which he's currently serving. One of the really interesting things is that towards the end of the movie, you notice that he takes a shift from being... he sort of finds his outlet, and oddly enough, it's art. And you could look up some of his art. It's really bizarre. If you've ever seen... You've seen Super Jail, right?
Yes.
The art from Super Jail bears a striking resemblance to the same art that Charles Bronson did, or has done while he's been in prison.
Huh.
It's actually kind of crazy. I can't help but feel that there's definitely a certain amount of influence there.
That wouldn't surprise me, actually.
He has been in prison ever since. He changed his name to Charles Salvador in 2014, I believe. In homage to his favorite artist, Salvador Dali.
Interesting.
But yeah, that's Bronson. That's pretty wild.
Sounds like an experience.
Yeah, 2014 was when he changed his name. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's a good movie. I'm sorry, Lane, if you were planning on watching it. I just spoiled a lot of it.
That's alright. I will still watch it at some point anyway.
Yeah, that's Bronson. I recommend you go watch it if you aren't already pissed that I ruined it for you.
Sounds fairly dank, I'd say.
That was me talking aimlessly about Bronson, and now, Lane wants to talk to us. Yes, you wants to talk to us about some music that he's got on his mind.
Yes, I would like to talk aimlessly about some things that I enjoy, aka music.
Hell yeah. That's what we're best known for.
Being a musician of sorts myself, I like to put a decent amount of emphasis in my life towards music, and basically I spend every hour of every day listening to music, even when I'm sleeping, so I've got plenty of it.
Yeah.
So just figured that today would be a good day to talk about some music that has caught my attention in the past and even currently.
Today is a good day to die.
That's true. Remember that time that girl killed herself on her Twitch stream?
That was so wild. And then she came back and somehow the stream turned off magically.
Yeah, this was weird. It was almost like she didn't actually kill herself.
Weird. Anyway, what do you have in store for us?
So, I'd like to talk about a couple of things. Recently, I've been listening to a band called The Tea Party, and this is continuing, obviously, with our tendency to be very much topical and timely with our reviews.
That's what we're best known for.
Yes. The album in particular by The Tea Party that I've been listening to is called Triptych, which was released in 1999. So, basically yesterday.
Just a couple weeks ago. I don't know what people are complaining about.
Exactly. So, The Tea Party, for those of you who don't know, is they're very, very proggy. They do a lot of really out there kind of stuff. They use a lot of strange, sometimes African-sounding instruments. Sometimes the drums sound pretty African. There's a little bit of Egyptian-style sound to some of their songs as well.
They're very, very worldly, right?
Yeah, that would be a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
They listening to some of their stuff. Of course, I've listened to it in the past. A couple people that I know, my mother, my godfather, both listened to them, and that was where I first heard of them. But I just really started paying attention to them recently, and I can hear now that I've started paying attention a lot of influence in another band that is one of my favorites, Nevermore. Their vocal styles are very similar.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
And a lot of the weird proggy stuff that Nevermore does, you can kind of hear similar stuff in the Tea Party as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna basically just give some quick overviews and some quick ratings on these albums as I go.
Cool.
So for Triptych, like I said, very out there, very original, and it's really, if you've never listened to anything like it before, it'll blow your mind, some of the stuff that they do with their music. One of the things that I do have a little bit of a problem with, and this is actually something that I'm going to harp on a couple of times today, I think, some of their songs don't really feel like they have an ending, per se, when they end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that it always is really disappointing to me when you have a really good song that doesn't have a satisfying closure to it.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing if you are writing a concept album like Between the Buried and Me's Colors, or Crack the Sky by Mastodon, where all the songs flow into each other until the last one. And even then, those songs, at the end of the album, there is definite, it's over, everything is tied up. It just, some of the songs in this feel like, it's like you really are expecting there to be just a little bit more, and then it's not there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel that.
But overall, like I said, they do some really cool stuff musically, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's metal. It's somewhere between hard rock and metal for the most part. If you're interested in looking at the roots for where a lot of proggy stuff came from, give them a try. I would rate Triptych at a probably an 8 out of 10 because they, like I said, it's an experience and it's very unique. So
All
so
right.
I would recommend checking that out. Another band that has been on my radar for a little while. I haven't listened to them quite as much lately, but I was stuck on them for a while. Sylosis. I don't remember if you remember me telling you about that.
This name sounds familiar, but I don't think I've listened to anything.
Yeah, they were. I heard about them the first time when I went to see Jeff Loomis play down in Austin.
Oh, okay.
A couple people there were talking about them, and I decided I'd check them out. These guys are definitely more death metal, a lot more of my standard fare. Um, they aren't nearly as out there as a lot of the other stuff that I listen to, but they are very, very talented musicians. And, their guitar is pretty top notch. I know I've shown you some of it, but, like we already established, that was a while ago.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the album in particular that really speaks to me is Monolith. And for particular songs that I like, the songs What Dwells Within and Born Anew are very high up there for me. Overall, I would say Monolith is worthy of an 8.5 out of 10. It's a lot more, like I said, standard fare than a lot of the other stuff I listen to, but very well executed.
Mm.
And now moving on, for a band that I know you are not a big fan of, but I do enjoy listening to, Flyleaf.
Yes, feel free to talk at length about that. I'll be over here.
The album Memento Mori. This one is another one that suffers from, like I said with Triptych, the feeling of a lack of closure to a lot of their songs.
Uh-huh.
And now, I will say I'm being objective with this review, so the rating is actually going to be pretty low, but I do still really enjoy listening to them. She's a very good singer. I like her voice a lot, but their instrumentation is kind of lacking in some cases. It's very, very simple, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. As we've discussed in the past, it doesn't necessarily have to be new or over the top as long as it's well executed. And they do have a few songs in here that are very well executed. The song Arise, for example, is one of my favorite songs, period. And the song that suffers least from the feeling from the lack of originality that some of their others do. And it is another song that actually, when it's over, and you can actually feel that.
That's always nice.
Yeah. There are a couple other songs. For example, I really enjoy the song This Close, but the more for the singing and the way that she sings than anything else. I actually don't. The guitar parts to it sound kind of whiny and obnoxious, so I have to tune them out to get to the parts that I actually enjoy, which is a little bit disappointing. But so for Memento Mori, I rated a 5 out of 10 for the purely musical experience. Yeah, from an objective point of view. But like I said, I do really enjoy a lot of the music off of it anyway. It's kind of like pop music, It's fun to listen to, but you can't have it on constantly, otherwise it numbs your brain, kind of thing. Let's see. How much more time do we have here? I don't want to overwhelm us with going into too much.
We're sitting at about an hour and a half, I think, something like that.
Okay. So I think I will. I think I'll leave it at that for today, and I will actually. Now there is one more that I want to touch on. An album by one of my favorite bands, Nevermore. The album The Obsidian Conspiracy, which is their last release before they disbanded, which was very disappointing to me. I saw Nevermore. The only time I saw them was the last tour they did before they disbanded. And they put on an amazing show despite some tension on stage. I don't know if you remember me telling you about it, but Dane, the singer, and Shepard, the bassist, actually got into a fight on stage.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And they didn't go into a whole lot of details initially when they broke up about why they did, but I would say that has a lot to do with it. Like I said, they are one of my favorite bands. Jeff Loomis is an amazing guitarist. He's one of my favorite guitarists of all time. Warrell Dane is one of my favorite singers. And they have done some very impressive stuff in their days. The Obsidian Conspiracy, however, is one of my least favorite albums overall that they ever produced.
Really?
There are a couple songs off of it that I really like. If you have the standard release, the last two songs, She Comes in Colors, and the album name song, The Obsidian Conspiracy, are both very, very well written, very impressive songs. Those songs, I would rate 10 out of 10 for both of them. They actually, they are two of my favorite songs, period. But a lot of their other songs, they feel like, you know those old commercials that they used to have late at night for the best of albums of, the rock songs from whatever year.
Kids Bop.
Not quite, but they had these compilation albums where this song from this artist, this song from this artist, and it was always their hits. A couple of their songs really felt like I could picture them being, and from your favorite band Nevermore, this song, Moonrise Through Mirrors of Death. Obviously they wouldn't put that on there because it's too intense sounding, but the tone of the songs really had that feel to it, where it was like way more poppy than anything they'd ever written before, and not as musically complex, Which obviously we can't expect everything to be a hit every time, but some of them were really lacking, and it was really disappointing overall. So, like I said, She Comes in Colors, The Obsidian Conspiracy, those two songs, they carry the album. But overall, I would actually only give The Obsidian Conspiracy, the album as a whole, a 5 out of 10 as well.
Wow, it's a shame that that's what they went out on.
Yeah. I do wish that they had been able to stick it out and make something else a little more, go out with a bang.
It's always frustrating whenever bands let personal issues get in the way of creating something, magnificent like that.
Yeah.
Because really, Loomis was one of the best, and then obviously their vocalist, I don't really know his name, he was way above. There's nothing else you'd really heard about, like him before.
Right.
Not in the metal scene, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dane actually, he was trained to be an opera singer for like 5 years before he ever started doing metal.
It definitely shows in what he's done.
Yep.
But is that all you have to talk about music this week?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, then I think that'll finish us up for that. Do we have any questions from our lovely, one half person now that's watching?
I think we might have like 3/4 of a person watching.
3/4 of a person? Alright, I'll settle for
that. So, I actually do have a couple of questions from our lovely listeners.
2 episodes in a row we have actual questions and no fans. I can't believe that we're making this happen.
So, first question, would you rather browse Dat Boy memes for 30 hours straight with no sleep, or go 30 hours without?
Is this like... I mean... strictly from a biological standpoint, it would be advantageous to just go without. Because I believe the longest that I've ever stayed up for was 40 hours and I wanted to die.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Maybe with that boy present. Oh shit! What up? Maybe with that boy present, I could make that journey. I don't know. It's tough to say.
It's a pretty difficult question, but having made it for about 50 hours and been okay.
That's more than 2 full days.
That is true. I never claimed to be a smart man. But
continuing to drive that point home.
I think that I would have a hard time going 30 hours straight without that boy in my life.
I mean, it pretty much means that I would have to not use Twitter for 30 hours, and that would be difficult in and of itself. I don't know. I guess I'd rather do 30 hours with that boy. I'm not really committed to either one, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see it.
What's our next question look like? Please don't be another that boy meme.
Oh, I can make it be a dat boy meme. There are plenty of questions about dat boy floating around with our listeners.
I mean, you are that boy.
Dat boy is me.
Oh shit, what up?
Another question here. Have you ever had banana milk? And if so, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10.
I've had bananas, I've had milk, never had them together.
I have had banana milk, and I have to say it is one of the most miraculous things I've ever tasted. I was introduced to it by a friend of mine, Ashley, who pitched it to me as the ultimate K-pop treat. And my experience with this was out visiting her in Midland, which is about 6 hours away. It was us and a few friends hanging out, and I was very ill at the time and was making the trip on willpower alone.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all sitting up watching movies. We were watching the Deadpool movie and drinking whiskey. Now, I'm not a fan of whiskey in the best of times, honestly. It's alright, but it is definitely not my favorite.
Me neither.
Also, while being ill, not the best choice. Banana
Yeah,
milk.
I could see it.
Banana milk, however, has a miraculous property, and it completely cuts any alcohol taste that is in your mouth when you drink it.
Any alcohol or just whiskey?
Yes, I would take a drink of the whiskey and take a sip of the banana milk, and the only thing I could taste was the banana milk, and it made my life so much better that day.
Wow.
I would rate banana milk a solid 10 out of 10.
Wow.
I highly recommend it to anyone who would like to check it out. So I have one more question from the listeners before we wrap it up, I think. Who wants a lolly as a question maker? Lolly obviously referring to Lolicon.
Alright. Why don't you go first?
Well, I think the obvious answer to that is us.
I'm glad that I let you answer first, because you chose the correct answer.
But yeah, I think that's all.
Can I get a lolly of that boy?
What's that?
Can I get a lolly of that boy?
That would be fantastic if we could do that, honestly. I think we'll have to ask around and see if we can get that hooked up for us.
I'm sure somebody's thought of it.
Yeah.
Alright then. Well, that completes episode 2. I can't believe that we made it, everybody. I, of course, have been your host, Dino Mora. You can find me only on Twitter, because I'm too incompetent to make anything else right now. On Twitter, at VZ_PZ. Lane Bartlett, where can people find you online?
People can find me online on the Twitters at kawaii_senpai69. Every now and again I'll actually... What's that?
I still can't believe you got that name. I can't believe that wasn't taken.
I was very excited when that happened. Every now and again I might even remember that I have a Twitter, so if you have any questions for us, feel free to post them there, and I may or may not reply.
Exactly.
I
That's how it goes.
I also have a Twitch channel up, the same name, kawaii_senpai69. I also may or may not remember that I have that and occasionally stream me failing at League of Legends.
Alright. Cool. Well, that's episode 2, everybody. We did it. Thank you all for listening. I'm sorry that we're going to have to do this now forever.
I think that it is important to note that now that you've sat through 2 whole episodes, you are legally obligated to continue listening.
Yes. Otherwise, punishment by death. That's the episode. See you later, everybody.
Good night, friends.